Welcome back to the second episode of Bookshop Hunters, the show where we hunt down the finest bookshops from across the globe. Today we find ourselves in Glasgow, the largest city in Scotland. I'm not sure why I wanted to put second there. It's the largest city in Scotland. We're going to find some bookshops. Now, being the largest city in Scotland, I thought Glasgow would have a ton of bookshops, but it didn't have nearly as many as I thought it might. However, it has so many Waterstones. An entire horde of Waterstones has taken residence in Glasgow. There is not an EV in sight. That might be the nerdiest joke I've made on here. But first up, we have Caledonia Books. Upon entering, you will find tall shelves covering the walls. This tall but narrow shop is packed with books. This is a second-hand shop with some really old books in it. At the back of the shop, there is this staircase leading upwards. It just looks really cool. However, you can't go up the stairs. It's blocked off. However, I get it. There's probably rules and things and they're not allowed to. And who knows what it leads up to. You can, however, go down the stairs into a basement area where there are more books. For aesthetics, I'm going to give this a solid 6. The old-timey look mixed in with this sort of very chaotic, traditional bookshop style just looks great. For stock and variety, this is a second-hand bookshop and it does have a lot of older books, which means if you're coming in looking for something specific, it might be quite hard to find. However, if you just want to come in for a wander and you just want to browse and look at some of these older books and you're not perhaps looking for something specifically, you could find some really cool gems in here because it is so mixed in the books that they stock. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 7. For creativity, this shop does look really cool, but it doesn't do a lot that really makes it stand out and is unique. You could perhaps do something with the stairs, but there's not really anything done. However, I can't get over the traditional bookshop style, so I am going to give it a 4. For accessibility, as I said at the start, this is a very narrow shop, and the basement floor is only accessible by stairs. However, the shop location is very good, and you would be able to get around the main store upstairs, so I'm going to give it a 5. Now, in case you didn't catch the first episode of Bookshop Hunters, there is a very special last rating that can net you either 100 points extra or minus 100 points, and that is, does it stock my book, Harbinger of Justice? And unfortunately, it does not, so minus 100 points. Giving Caledonia Books the total of negative 78. Next up, the hunt continues into what seems to be just a normal housing estate. However, once you see the sign and you go down the creepy dark alleyway, tucked in the corner, we have our second bookshop, Thistle Books. Now, Thistle Books has a really interesting layout. They have lots of different nooks and sections that makes it just really fun to walk about. So for aesthetics, I'm going to give Thistle Books a 6. Classic old-timey style bookshop, a ton of fun, lots of wee nooks and things to explore. And I do think that the outside door looks really nice, which is a weird note, but I just thought it looked cool with the plant and everything. As for stock and variety, this is a second-hand bookshop. So you won't find any new books, but it does have a good mix of different types of books, including sheet music and anything from fantasy, horror, a massive king section, to much more niche topics. I'm going to give it a solid 6. For creativity, I'm going to go right down the middle of the road here and give it a 5. I do really like the layout of the shop, something a wee bit different just to explore and wander around. It does make it stand out from some of the other bookshops. There's nothing that makes me go, oh, you need to go to this. But it's still well worth a visit. Accessibility is not the best. You do need to go down a cobblestone road that takes you out the back. However, if you can drive, I think they have parking down that little alleyway. I might be wrong. And also, because of the layout that it does make it very interesting, the accessibility is a wee bit limited going around the shop So I'm going to give it a 4. And last but not least, does it stock Harbinger of Justice? No, so minus 100 points. Giving Thistle Books a total of minus 79. While hunting the next bookshop, we did come across a frozen Nazgul. So we had a quick meditation session and then we moved on. The next beast might be one of the most bizarre bookshops we have come across so far on Bookshop Hunters. This shop is it is called Voltaire and Rousseau. Even before you get into the shop proper, you will see a pile of books. And this is just to mentally prepare you for stepping into the shop. Because once you get into the shop, books are piled everywhere. They are stacked up in the most bizarre fashion you will ever find in a bookshop. With some of these secondhand bookshops, I do like to say they can be quite chaotic. Well, this one is particularly chaotic. And to top it all off, there is a cat. And here is it jumping up and lying down on top pile of books. So for aesthetics, I probably would have given it a 7. But for the cat, we're going to knock it up to an 8. For stock and variety, this is a second-hand bookshop. However, the stock seems to be rather limited to a very select type of book. There's a lot of history books. So I'm going to give stock and variety a 2. For creativity, I try really hard not to tie this too much to aesthetics and more about something that makes the shop stand out. However, the book stacking and the cat make this stand out. So I'm going to give them a 7. For accessibility, it isn't too bad. It is all on one floor, and while it can be a bit narrow, most people should have no problem getting around, so I'm going to give this one a 7. And finally, does it stock Harbinger of Justice? No, so minus 100 points. Bringing the total to minus 76. Now, because this is the land of Waterstones, with an entire pack settled down within Glasgow's boundaries, we have to go check out at least one of them. So we headed over to Sauchiehall Street to see the biggest of the Waterstones. Now this Waterstones is massive, with 5 floors and more books than you could ever hope to read. They also have gifts as well as bookseller recommendations, and they have this little guy, so that's good to know. And they have 2 cafes. They have one at the top and one downstairs as well. Just in case you can't make it to those stairs and need your caffeinated boost, Waterstones has got your back. Now, Waterstones does have an unfair advantage of being a big chain and having a huge building. However, I still think the aesthetics are really nice, especially the downstairs area where you can wander about and there's also a balcony. And unlike the first bookshop, it has stairs that you can ascend. So bonus point for stairs that you can ascend. So for aesthetics, I am going to give them a 7. It's just very clean and neat. And while there's nothing that's mind-blowing in the layout, I do think that it's just very nice. As for stock and variety, as I said, there is an insane amount of books in this shop. They are everywhere and contain everything from graphic novels, manga, fantasy, sci-fi, classics. In fact, the stock is so good that they even have a book for when you're bored of reading books. They really do have a bit of everything. However, you will not come across some rare second-hand finds that you might in some of the other shops. And there is no indie or self-pub books. So because of that, I am going to give stock and variety an 8. For creativity, while I think the aesthetics are very, very nice and very clean, apart from this little guy, there isn't a whole lot that makes the shop different from other bookshops of this size and scale. So I'm going to give creativity a 3. Accessibility, this is on a main street in the centre of Glasgow. There are ramps, there is an elevator, and even the steps up to the little balcony area around the cafe does have its own stop in the elevator. So for accessibility, I'm going to give them the full 10. However, does it stock Harbinger of Justice? Unfortunately not, so minus 100 points. Giving Waterstones the score of negative 72. And so, the hunt must come to an end. The beasts have been located. They have been rated. And the journey will continue to further lands and other bookshops. If you have some really cool bookshops, tell me in the comments. I'll come rate them.